Did you know that annually there are 900,000 earthquakes worldwide with a magnitude of 2.5, but we cannot feel them during our daily lives because they have low magnitudes? Now that we have highly urbanized areas such as Vancouver, earthquakes are a much more serious threat now than before we urbanized land. On the other hand, with highly urbanized areas comes advanced technologies that can prevent and aid earthquake damage.
During our daily lives, earthquakes occur oftenly, as whether we may be learning at school or working in the city or simply watching TV, earthquakes appear all over the globe at different times and in different situations. As earthquakes occur oftenly, though we cannot feel them, the arrows represent tectonic plates, which are the cause behind earthquakes. After the sudden shocks of earthquakes or even minor ones, the diagram displays how tectonics act through this process.
Moreover, earthquakes are caused by the moving plates under the Earth's outer crust. This process is called plate tectonics.
Earthquakes are caused by tectonic plates that move due to thermal energy from the Earth's core. Plate motion occurs in the asthenosphere, a partly molten layer below the lithosphere. Here, convection currents in Earth's mantle circulates heat and magma as they control the plate movement. Plate movement also relates to continental drift, which is a theory proposed by German scientist Alfred Wegener. The continental drift theory stated that continents were different in the past, as they were actually part of a supercontinent Wegener named Pangaea. Over millions of years, the continents spread due to plate movement as they are now seen today.
Agriculture can be greatly affected when it comes to earthquakes. Land loss can be devastating to a farm if an earthquake were to occur. When an earthquake hits agricultural land, the unconsolidated soil will collapse into the ground. This process is called liquefaction. Liquefaction occurs when an area that is mainly water-saturated sediment is struck by an earthquake. The weak dirt and sand cannot withstand the weight of buildings and trees, so the buildings and trees will sink into the ground. For example, in Vancouver, the Fraser River area is likely to sink into the ground because of the swampy, wet soil in that area. Plants and buildings are not the only thing affected. Humans and animals are harmed as well. Animals kept in sheds or barns will likely die or be severely injured when an earthquake occurs. The barns containing the animals will collapse on top of the animals. Humans are also at risk when working on the barns or sheds. If the structures are not properly built, the buildings will collapse onto the workers. The lack of manpower only makes it more difficult to recover from the drastic effects of the earthquake. Lastly, earthquakes also affect equipment used in agriculture. Tractors and other vehicles are at risk due to liquefaction. The weight of the heavy vehicle is too much for the weak and saturated soil. This means that the vehicles will sink into the ground. Irrigation systems are also affected when it comes to earthquakes. Many farmers prefer the underground sprinkler system as a way to water their plants. This can be troublesome when an earthquake hits agricultural land. The earthquake waves cause the piping in the sprinklers to crack. The cracks will eventually get bigger, releasing high levels of water into the soil. All in all, earthquake damage towards agriculture can be very costly. This is why we need to prepare ourselves for a major earthquake.
Earthquakes can greatly affect urbanized areas. Evidence of its effects are the destruction of structures, land destruction, and economic destruction/economic loss. The destruction of structures causes a lot of damage to the environment by the appearance of large amounts of pollution, whether it's air, water, or ground pollution. The destruction of structures also demolishes or disturbs surrounding environments, such as habitats to local animals. Earthquakes cause a lot of land destruction by generating tsunamis, which leads to flooding, and by generating liquefaction, Generating liquefaction is a downfall for BC's agricultural land because liquefaction ruins the fertile land. Liquefaction is when the earthquake shakes the soil and the soil would lose its strength, causing it to act like a liquid and start sinking into the ground. The effects of liquefaction are the loss of crops and the loss of its fertile soil. Tsunamis are generated from larger and shallower earthquakes with a fault line near an ocean. If an earthquake were to hit Vancouver, there is a really high chance of it generating a tsunami because Vancouver is a victim of tectonic subduction. Tectonic subduction is when one tectonic plate is sliding underneath another tectonic plate. During earthquakes, countries are hit lose a lot of money, which means their economy goes down. The disaster affects the government and insurance companies the most because they lose a lot of money by paying off workers and covering the costs of the destruction.
Despite the tremendous damage earthquakes cause, we're able to reduce the amount of damage by providing. Vancouver is located in a seismically active region called the Ring of Fire, where earthquakes and volcanic activity have occurred in the past, as we have responded poorly to the situations. This was because many families and companies were unprepared and unequipped with the proper survival gear to endure the disasters. In these areas where earthquakes occur often, the process of building stronger, sturdier buildings is largely effective. Strong structures with good infrastructures as well as sturdy foundations have a tendency of being more resistant towards earthquakes. Poor houses such as concrete foundations with wood walls are very vulnerable to earthquake strikes as the material is very weak and fragile. In the 1700s, an earthquake with a magnitude of 9 hit BC's Cascadia subduction zone, which destroyed an entire First Nations village near Vancouver. The main reason for the destruction was because of a tsunami produced by the earthquake. In 1946, chaos struck the Vancouverites as an earthquake of a magnitude of 7.3 hit Vancouver Island, causing a landslide that damaged a large amount of property damage. In 2016, an earthquake with a magnitude of 4.4 appeared west of Vancouver Island in the Pacific Ocean, which reached Vancouver Island and Vancouver. During all these disasters, very little Vancouverites were ready and prepared, as many lost their lives and loved ones during the time. Through this devastating experience, Vancouver has been making plans for future earthquake strikes such as the Big One, which is a hypothetical earthquake of a magnitude of 8 or greater, which is expected to hit along the San Andreas Fault. This information gives awareness to families and companies to prepare for this earthquake. Earthquake packs are essential to have as they consist of water, first aid kits, and many more items that are necessary for survival. Moreover, as earthquakes cause damage to crops and water filtration, the damaged city must ask for worldwide aid from other countries for food and shelter. Economic and political turmoil is also produced as stabilization is required. With the economy of Vancouver being very low after an earthquake strike, it severely affects the government as it will have to provide rations of food and shelter, as well as money to rebuild. The perspective of some Vancouverites that they may not live through the dangerous time can alter their choices, as some may begin to strive for resources and go for desperate lengths to achieve them. They may see this situation as futile and despondent, though it will be up to the government to correct their mentalities and lead them into the right direction. In conclusion, due to the occurrence of earthquakes, they can cause tremendous damage towards several factors. Agriculture and urban development are two major areas that are affected, as these two processes widely contribute to maintaining populations. With the knowledge of experiencing earthquakes before, we Vancouverites are ready for this natural disaster, as we have the ability to maintain a positive mindset of never losing hope and leading others into the right direction.